Wonderful, wonderful. So the first thing that I want to say, we just done this. We talked about the support page. Um, we can skip the definition of learning. We're going to come back to this. What we're doing right now actually is a very important process in the mechanism of redefining how we do our work as teachers. Students come into our room with an expectation of how we will be based on their previous lived experience. And many of our colleagues who are not in this room right now and are not conscious that grades sometimes cause problems set expectations for our students by creating courses for them. And when we challenge that, we challenge the status quo. And that is very uncomfortable for students, and it's uncomfortable for us as teachers. And over the years, I've learned that one of the best ways to deal with that challenge is actually to deal with it as a team by bringing in the lived experiences. And we'll talk more about that as the talk goes on, but you all now bring into this conversation, we are all now conscious that it's not just me that believes that there are issues with grading, right? You all might not have the words for it yet, but these stories that we hear, the lived experiences of our colleagues in this room, tell us that we're not crazy when we think grades are weird. We're not crazy when we talk about the harms caused by grades. We're not crazy to believe that traditional grading is really not helpful when it comes to inspiring deep learning. So, we'll follow up with the talk. After this talk, if you feel inspired and you feel that you want to keep going, I'll be in Adelone in January, and I'd love to get your emails so that we can do some work over time. The question that I want to answer today is, what is ungrading? And I'm going to tell you my version of ungrading, and then I'm going to share with you some resources that give you some other ideas where you can learn more. So I define an ungraded classroom as one in which the teacher and students effectively eliminate the use of letter grades to support student learning. You just don't use letter grades. I'll talk about our obligation to the state of California, and I'll talk about the law that requires us to assign, or the rule that requires us to assign grades and all this, but that's the major idea of the ungraded classroom. We just don't use grades at all to talk about learning. I'm going to give you my flavor of this, so you can think about ungrading as like a flavor of pizza. There are many, many different flavors of pizza. There are many different ways to realize this ungraded idea. Two books that are quite helpful in this space. One of them is called Ungrading by Susan Blum. The other one is called Punished by Rewards by Alfie Cohen. I would actually say that this book, Punished by Rewards, is the intellectual parent of this book. Yep. Elena, what do you think?
It's so awesome to even hear it with the author's voice,
yep,
the way he describes it, and it's just like, I keep telling people about it every time. Every time about rewards and punishments.
It's life-changing. It's life-changing. He makes me laugh hard. The point of this is, one of the things you'll see in this talk, if I had to give you one gift, it would be the gift of time to read. And we'll talk about, I have a nice resource that I'll encourage you to watch. This year, I'm about to finish 30 books by the end of the year. I've read 30 books this year, while working 45 to 55 hours a week and raising 2 kids and having a wife, and etc. I don't claim that that's good for all people. My point is that I demand of Foothill College that I read a lot, and challenging grading requires reading. And so you'll see that I try to give you pointers along the way of things that have been really good for me. So the point is, I'm going to talk about my version of ungrading. This is just one of many. These books really give some great ideas about other methods that you might use. One of the questions that I think is valid is why would I ungrade? Why is it the case that I want to challenge the status quo? And this book is well worth reading. It's called Talking About Leaving Revisited, Persistence, Relocation, and Loss of in Undergraduate STEM Education. This book, they did a first version of this book in 1990. It's an ethnographic study of college STEM education. And 1990, they did the first version. And this is the second version they did in 2015. Both times they found that out of all students who came into college wanting to be STEM majors, only 40 to 50% graduate with a STEM degree. Now, I used to think that the system was broken. But broken things don't do what they're intended to do. I no longer think this system is broken because this system is doing exactly what it's designed to do. So I don't say that the system is broken, I say that it's harmful. And the way, when I say that to college educators, it's sometimes a little bit affronting, like, how could you say that the system is designed to do this? But let's change our scope for a minute. If an engineering company designed cars that killed 50 to 60% of drivers, would you buy a car from that company? Would you allow that company to continue as normal? If you got your government to challenge that company and the company said, hey, the reason that these drivers are dying is because they don't know how to drive rigorously, would you accept that? And my claim is that the longer I've studied this problem, the more I think that it's not a problem with how we grade, it's a problem with grades themselves. And this is not a random statement. Like, there are books, you can read entire books. They've known this since the 1960s and 70s. They've done psychological studies on learning and cognitive science, and they know that there's a disconnect between what grades are designed to. Yes, just amazing. Would you let Twitter buy that company? Oh my God. Dan, you get my favorite comment so far, man. That is painful. So the point of this is that, I have a story about this man. I ended his career. He wanted to be an electrical engineer. He took my class twice. I failed him twice. Called him the next quarter. He said, yeah, thanks a lot, but I'm done. And it was my choice in grading that made that happen. I have a nice blog post on that story. And at some point I've realized that I cannot blame the system. I have to take ownership over this myself. I am the system. When I use these policies that were gifted to me, I am recreating those policies. And these policies are killers. So when I talk about why I ungrade, it's because I have the power to make decisions about how grading works. And what I need to do is get educated about what grading is, how it works, and how I can undermine this harm that I see propagated. So this relates to a larger idea in my life. When I think about how grading, why I ungrade, because I want to do good work with students. I got into this to be an educator. It relates to this idea, what is teaching? And when I think about that definition, it's not easy to answer that. Many people think that teaching is talking, and I fundamentally disagree with that. My statement is, if learning is not happening, then teaching is not happening. So when I define teaching, I say teaching is the art of facilitating, inspiring, encouraging, supporting, and empowering learning. A teacher is someone who stimulates learning. So if learning isn't happening, teaching isn't happening, period. The larger thing, though, is that teaching happens within a social context. So the work of a teacher is about creating an environment that helps students learn and liberates them from larger structures of oppression that block, impede, and constrain their learning. And I'm going to claim that grades are actually a structure of oppression, and we'll talk about that. This is a big idea. It's a very, very big idea, right? And so when I ask, why do I ungrade? It's because I recognize now, I know that grades are to learning what cigarettes are to health. And as somebody, doctors of medicine take something called the Hippocratic Oath, which is, I shall do no harm on my patients. I believe that teachers should have something called a Hippocratic Oath. We should take an oath that says, I shall not do harm on my students. And the moment that I am conscious that a structure or something that I'm using in my class does harm on students, I have a responsibility, a professional responsibility to stop doing that thing and then to challenge the system that requires that I do that. So, if you ask me, why do I ungrade? At this point in my career, it's because I feel a moral obligation as part of my Hippocratic Oath that I take as a doctor of learning health to do everything in my power to unlock my students' potential and to help them learn. And thus that means I have to liberate them from structures of oppression, right? I know this is a lot, but this is my flavor of ungrading, right? So let's start at the top and go backwards. So we'll start at the thing that most people would ask, right? Hey, Jeff, if you're trying to eliminate grades from your class, but you're in a system that requires that you assign grades, how do you do that, right? how do you assign grades in a class? The state of California says you have to submit a grade at the end of the quarter, right? And you're telling me you don't use grades. So what policy do you use to support that? And I'll tell you, it's very, very easy. There's only 2 assignments in my class that students are required to turn in. Every single assignment in my class they can challenge. So I provide a lot of ideas on the things that I expect from them. And if they don't like my ideas, they can challenge it and counter propose. There's no such thing as getting out free of learning. So if they don't like my assignments, they have to come up with their own assignment that replaces my assignment. The last assignment is what I call the final self-evaluation. And assuming that they finished the class, this is one of the questions on that final self-evaluation. In the space to the right, please indicate the grade you earned in this class. I tell them I encourage you to give yourself an A if you got through this class. But if you finished, you get to determine that for yourself. Right? I literally say, if you ask me, I think you should give yourself an A, assuming you finished what you said you were going to finish. But I'm not going to force that. And some students say, Jeff, I really want a B+. And I'm like, you should give yourself an A. And they're like, I want a B+. And I say, you should give yourself an A, but you get to determine, right? So that's it. That's as easy as it is. And the nice thing about this is that there's no questions about how this works, right? This is very, very clear and very simple. Now, probably alarm bells are ringing in your head because you're like, hey, wait a second. This is very weird. I've never seen something like this. So I think a better question than how do I determine grades at the end is, how do I actually run my classes? How do I make sure that I'm not committing fraud to the state of California? So I suppose I should actually switch the order of these around. I have a few rules. I have 3 basic rules in my class. Rule number 1 is that on any given day, my students' health must take priority. So I tell my students, rule 1, your health always comes first. So if you have to choose between my course and your health, could you guess what I ask my students to choose? I don't know if there's people in this room, right?
Their health is health.
Always. Right? On any given day, I want them to center health, because if I'm serious about deep learning, health has to come first. This is related to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I want them to be healthy first. If they don't have health, they can't do learning, period. Rule number 2, this is kind of interesting, actually. Deep learning over shallow learning. And there's a whole, so I always say to a student, I want you to learn deeply. So I never want you to do shallow learning in our class. And the way that this shows up is every student gets to decide what's best for their own learning. Now, my students are not professional learners yet, and I take a huge responsibility to train them on how to learn. You'll see that later. But the point is, the only person, the world's leading expert on what a student needs to do to learn is that student. It's not me. I have a lot of stuff that can help that person, but ultimately they are in the best position on a day-to-day basis to make decisions about what the next step should be and what the best ways to achieve those steps, assuming that I give them the right resources, right? So that's goal number 2. Rule number 1 is health got to take priority. Rule number 2 is deep learning over shallow learning, right? And we'll talk about this, what deep learning is. Students are in the best place to determine what, when, and where, and what to do to deep learn. And then the third rule is that they can't ghost me. There's no such thing as ghosting Jeff. If you ghost me, I will drop you, period. So what that means is I need to see them at least once every 3 weeks for a one-on-one learning conference. Those conferences last anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes. I've had 2 or 3 conferences this year that lasted 2 hours and a half. I was on campus very late. Very special stuff. In addition to meeting with me face-to-face and looking into my eyes and staring into my soul and presenting their portfolio, I also ask them to give me, come to class every single day and work in small groups. And if they miss class, I ask them to text me. So I don't use email ever with my students unless I ask them for like a letter of recommendation, something. One of my students taught me how to use Google Voice. And so I am in contact with every one of my students. All 103 students have my Google Voice number, not my personal number. They can text me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I only check it when I'm on duty, right? And so what's nice about that is it's a really convenient way for us to stay in contact with each other. So given these rules, you might ask, well, what does your grade book look like? Right? I mean, that's maybe not the next thing. Maybe you want to know what the students are doing, but let me just show you, we're going to go from the top down, right? The top thing is what the policy is. This is what rules I have in my class. And then this is what my grade books looks like. This is not the whole thing. This was spring 2021. You can, under this, I don't know if you've noticed that there are like these little URLs. When I have been working, I have been writing blog posts like a fiend so that all of my work is accessible to others who want to follow along. So if you just click on this blog post, you will get to an entire blog post that highlights what I am saying right now and gives you very detailed ideas about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. No way we're going to do that in a 90-minute talk. This is over 15 years of work. And many of these things have this in there. Probably 60, 70 books go behind this. So the point of this, though, is that this is my grade book. Every one of these rows is marked by a student name. Conference 1, Conference 2, Conference 3. During each conference, I ask my students to present a portfolio. So the challenge that I give my students at the beginning of the quarter is, your job in this class is to create a textbook of material, a portfolio of material that represents your best understanding of the material when I take that snapshot for the conference. And not only do I want you to write a textbook for this class, I want you to write a textbook that you could understand 10 years from now, assuming that you've never looked at it again. So you look at it the entire quarter, you put it away for 10 years, you look back, and that 10-year in advance person has to look back at your own material and understand it at a deep level. That's my challenge. And then they'll say, well, what has to be in the textbook? And I say, well, anything you like. Anything you'd like. That we have a certain, I define a set of concepts using this course outline of record. I call that, I focus on a subset of those ideas, and then I provide an entire website that has all of the material available to them, right? So we can take a look at, the nice thing about all of this is that 100% of my stuff is online and open and free. One thing you don't know about me is that I write my own textbooks and give them away for free. So my linear algebra textbook, not only do I write a textbook, I also do YouTube videos of the same content. So you have full and open access to all of my teaching in the public. You can see my calendars, you can see my activities, right? So here, students have access, and I walk them through this. This is about a 2-week training process. In fact, we can actually take a look at what the beginning of my course looks like. So let's take a look at the beginning level calendar. This is the one that students need to finish in order to justify that they can assign their own grade. So the nice thing is, with a self-paced class like this, it's all self-paced and it's all flipped learning. The entire first 2 weeks of the quarter are all training, and it's intense. Students are like, this is, people who hear my policy think my classes are easy. And my students tell me that, 1, this is the hardest class they've ever taken, and 2, that this is one of the most fun experiences. All of my classes are full right now, all of them. I am not having the enrollment issues. And I have students I have a guy that thought he was never going to take a math class again. He's a bombero, a fireman, and he signed up for 48A, and he's like asking me, will you teach 48B? Because he's having fun doing math. It's just amazing. We'll talk about it, right? So anyways, the first 2 weeks are all training. Students are getting an idea because I've got to retrain them. They're socialized in a system where none of this makes sense. Starting week 3 is when I start asking them for evidence that they're working through the math. And this is a flipped classroom environment. They can watch the videos that I make for them. Literally, I put all of my stuff on YouTube. You just click on the playlist. There's entire playlists that are available for free. And then the nice thing is, each video, I actually write a textbook. At some point, this textbook right now is about 450 pages. At some point soon, it will be 1,500, I hope. And I do this for every class. The amount of work that I've done to make this happen is pretty high. I'm very proud of it. But the nice thing is that there's zero barrier to entry. My students do not have to purchase materials. They get it all for free. If I don't write the book myself, I use OER stuff. And then the claim is they got to work through this material along the pace that I provide. Now, the nice thing is I'm only sampling in a class of 40 students. I break them up into groups of 4. So 40 divided by 4 is 10 groups. Each group is composed of 2 learning partners. Each conference, one partner speaks and the other listens. So when I go to a group of 4 on a particular day, right now I'm looking at Anna, Bruce, Elena, and Nick. Let's pretend that Anna, Bruce, Elena, and Nick are a group of 4. Anna is Bruce's partner, Elena is Nick's partner. So this week, Anna and Elena will present. During those presentations, Bruce and Nick take notes. Next week, it switches. So Anna is the note taker, Elena is the note taker the next week, and then Bruce and Nick present that following week. And each presentation, literally, I'm just looking at what the student has done between the last time we met and this time to show evidence of their learning, right? I literally am looking at the entire portfolio of work between when the last time I met and then this time along this. And the nice part about this is if students fall behind, no problem, because then the requirement is that they catch up by the next time, and that's a discussion that we can have together. There's no issue. They can't ghost me. If I see a student that has produced no work, they're gone. It's not immediate. I actually have a discussion with them and I give them a chance, but there are many ways that I make sure that students produce work over the quarter, and it is very, very authentic because they're looking straight at me, telling me their progress and showing me their result. It's much more authentic than an exam, and in many ways, and I can talk more about that as we deepen our practice. So the point is that every one of these, you can see lesson 6, that means the student got through 0 through 6. Lesson 8, so between conference 1 and conference 2, that student only finished 2 more lessons. The next one, this red one, meant that I was worried about dropping that student, so I reached out to that person. We had a conference, they got to lesson 11, and then I gave them extra attention to make sure they got through the entire course. Lesson 16 was the last lesson for this quarter. Once I saw they finished lesson 16, I put a checkbox on, and they're done. Once they see this checkbox, that's how they earn the ability to grade themselves. And the nice thing is you might ask yourself, well, Jeff, you know, this idea of A's, you gotta have some definition of what an A means, right? Well, sure. In section 55002 of California Title V, they define, this is actually from that code, educational code, they define A as excellent. Now, I want to challenge the premise that doing well on exams means excellence. And I challenge it from lived experience. I have aced exams on content about which I knew very little. And I've gotten horrible grades on exams on content about which I knew a lot. So I challenge the premise that getting through grades, getting through exams, and turning in homework assignments is a direct correlation with excellence. So I don't agree with that premise at all. And I have a lot of evidence in my own life and research-based evidence that shows that our current system does not enforce this. However, if my job is to help my students learn at an excellent level, I might ask myself, well, what does it mean to develop excellent levels of mastery? And this is where a little bit of reading from performance psychology and the development of expertise is useful. Peak is by Anders Ericsson. The Talent Code is by Daniel Coyle. When I read these books, what I learned was that we actually know what excellence looks like, and we know what it means for young people to develop excellence in a field. And this is a model. You know, the crazy thing is I have all of my students read through training about what it means to learn. So you can see this on my ungrading project. Let me see if I can get this for you. So you get a highlight here of what this looks like. Let's get to today's blog post. And I'm going to get down to the bottom here. Let's see, today's posts. There we go. All right, so if you click on Jeff's Ungrading Project Home, this is every ungrading resource, blog post, video that I've produced over the last 10 years of my career, all available for free. Someday I will write a book and publish it, but I want all the content of that book to be available for free before I do that. And that's why I've taken so long to do this, because I don't want a paywall on this stuff. This is very difficult work, and I want others to be able to follow along and emulate without having to pay for it. So the point is that what I wanted to show you is in the first 2 weeks of class, students are finishing 3 Conquering College labs. Let me send this out to you. These are intense labs. They're intense. Not all students finish them well. Each lab, this first lab takes 4 to 6 hours. I've had some students spend up to 12 hours on it. And that's due on the second day of class. Lab number, and this is all about how to schedule yourself, how to schedule your time and your energy. All blog posts that I wrote with activities underneath. The second lab is about building deep learning systems. It has a definition of what deep learning is. It has a model for deep learning, which I'm about to show you. 5 stages of deep learning. It has mechanisms to progress through this. This is equivalent to reading about 15 books in cognitive science. Literally, this came from reading 15 books, and then I just synthesized it. Could you imagine a teacher that says, read these 15 books over the weekend? What would you say if your teacher said that to you? I hope you would say one phrase, 2 words, right? I can't ask my students to do that, but I can ask them to read 4 blog posts and synthesize some information. And the nice part about that is once all of us are on the same page about what learning means, we can have very detailed conversations. So the third one gets students to start thinking about how to filter deep learning in the context of our class. This is due on day 2 of class, so they get it day 1, due day 2. This is due day 3, this is due day 4. So by the end of week 2, my students have spent between 20 and 30 hours, not all students, but most of my students, 20 and 30 hours thinking about what learning means and generating their own ideas about what they're going to do in the class associated with that reading. So for the rest of the class, and I know that we're running here, but today is not a let's get all of these ideas down pat. Today is an introduction to ideas that are very different from ideas that you've seen before in my estimation. And I want to invite you. In fact, maybe we do this now. I have more to say about this. The point is when I'm looking at my students' portfolios, my job is to get them in their sweet spot. My job is to do deliberate practice. And I do it in very, very special ways. I think very deeply about what it means for students to develop expertise in mathematics. What evidence do I need to see to justify if they're doing that? And then every time I see their portfolio, I validate the things that I think are amazing, and I try to push them 1 to 3 steps in advance so that the work that they do at the end of the quarter looks significantly different than the work they did at the beginning of the quarter, and they have covered the entire content, the core content of the class in that portfolio.